with us today, we have Ramira Rufus. She is a next generation enterprise security architect, a university professor, academic, and industry scientist. Welcome, Ramira.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angie. Hello, everyone. Very, very honored to be here to share with all of the insights, all of the wonderful things that's happening at the Elevate Career Fair this session. Like Angie said, my name is Dr. Amira Rufus. I've run a gambit of things that I've done in the cyberspace, a lot of technical work with the elements that she spoke about with the contracting areas, purely scientists and academic. This element focuses more on a lot of the outreach work that I like to do that I'm not really able to dive into within, places of employment and things of that nature. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I thought this would be a really good topic to bring up at a career fair as folks are trying to find their way and navigate through the employment process, workforce and, academia and that whole gambit, that pipeline. So I'm going to dive right in. Like I said, the title is Exposing a Gap, Cybersecurity Workforce and Education. Now, really quick, I like to say that this particular work or slide is the slide deck is really stemming from some work that really had a different direction. So this is more of a tangent of that work. And I'll start by addressing why are we even doing this analysis? Originally, we wanted to find out what was happening within the cybersecurity kind of paradigm as far as that pipeline for supply and demand, right? The workforce for the talent and things of that nature. Now, what we discovered is that this is not a unique problem. This actually occurs in other industries, one in particular, biomedical, things of that nature, where you have very specialized kind of criteria for resourcing talent and staffing needs. What we discovered here, and that's the reason why we're doing a gap analysis. Really quick, a gap analysis is really trying, at a very simplistic term, we're trying to pretty much see what are those kind of hindrances or those kind of blockers for where a particular environment or situation is at an actual level of performance, and how do you get to a desired level. So how that relates here through this series that I actually use when I work with my clients, how that relates here is that we're trying to see, okay, what is this huge disparity against folks trying to either jump into the cyber field, maneuver within their career path, or transition to higher levels, or, even in some ways, try to make an entire pivot in another direction. What we discovered in this work was that there are some elements that are not being taken in consideration that actually kind of makes the process a little more convoluted than it needs to be. So that's pretty much what we'll address. As you'll see in my slides, I won't really, thank you very much. I won't really dive in, reading, word verbatim. I'm not one of those type of presenters. So if there's anything someone needs me to go back with, just let me know. But other than that, I'm going to dive right into it. So, sorry, that's not actually how the slide works, the slideshow. So basically, like I said, what we started was we just looked at a kind of generalized problem. Okay, what's happening within the cybersecurity workforce, and basically feeling that gap of don't want to necessarily use gap right there, but filling that void of the workforce, of the talent that's out there and the talent that's more importantly needed. And of course, we started at a global scale. And the diagram to the left, the far left, as you see, is what we collected as data, kind of globally. Of course, every single place on the planet is not represented, but we try to get a proper representation of the skill set and those particular numbers that we thought were kind of relevant for the sample population that we were looking at. And of course, we saw a pretty disparity in the US. And so of course we wanted to focus there. Now I do want to say the data that was collected for this very huge gap that shows for China and India There is some emphasis there. However, that's not a part of the scope of this talk, but that is something that as time progresses, we would like to see if we could journey into that gap. We have some, assumptions, but, since we're scientists, we're not allowed to do that. So we actually have to follow a process. So right now we're kind of in pretty early qualitative work with that study. So if I dive over to the area that we're looking at, we then wanted to focus in the United States. And my next slide, I want to show where we started seeing some disparities. So I'm taking those two slides over to the far right, and they're on the far right on this slide. And we had looked at basically a percentage and a kind of empirical actual value for each one of the, you want to say, data points for the job openings compared against the employed workforce, right? And the diagram on the right looks like it kind of flows in a normal fashion. And also, but the problem is that the diagram in the middle, we saw a little disparity around, basically coming out of 2021, moving into, of course, this year. And it didn't quite match. It wasn't like a huge disparity, but that triangle with that slant at the bottom, that variation was really, really off. So we said, okay, look, let's dive into, more granular elements. And we started looking at for state. And once again, every state is represented here, but this is a sample population that we think would be a best representation. And so what we noticed was by state, that matched or was similar, kind of congruent to the diagram on the far right. But we were still concerned about that percentage. Why did we get a percentage that did not look like the two diagrams that basically are on the far left and the far right of the middle one? So that's where we started diving into what we considered to be this problem. And the reason why this is important for this particular forum is because in the next few slides, you're going to start to see some of the reasons why when folks are looking to kind of streamline and understand exactly what they want to do in cyber, it's a little more complex than you actually thought from us just taking that tally that you saw on the previous slide. In the previous slide, that was a very general approach to trying to solve or answer this question. And what we discovered was that approach was a little off because we didn't look at the true nature or components that were involved with this supply and this demand. So now if we jump to this slide, we're talking about a simple supply and demand problem, right? So we then associated demand with the knowledge, the education that's requested, as you see in the chart in the top. And then we looked at entry-level jobs and paired up against the requested education. And if you notice in each one of these, either bar charts or pie graphs, it seems like folks in the bachelor's degree area, they're winning, right, for these particular cyber skills. And then, you have some luck in the kind of the sub BA. Those are pretty much a lot of the associate degrees, junior college, but also a lot of the certifications and licensing that people engage in when they're, either have done a lot of higher education learning. It could be adult learners. It could be all kinds of different reasons, but they don't necessarily go through a traditional degree program. And then you see the graduate level folks having that kind of smaller percentage of, kind of matching a little bit of the sub BAs. Now, what is funny, thank you. What is kind of funny here is that in actuality, because, I'm a teacher, professor as well in my background, I noticed that's not true to what's happening here. Students, adult learners, folks in the field trying to figure out where their next step is going to be, what's their next direction. They're not having the success that's being represented in these charts. So well, we had then decided, okay, since we're talking about supply and demand, well, now let's look at the supply side. So now let's look at the workforce. And what we had discovered was that this was a much more complicated problem than we thought, than someone just saying, hey, I would like to get into the cyber field and I'm just going to pick this particular area and I should be fine. I'm just going to grow here in years. Now, an example that I will give, and not to, shed any kind of a negative light or anything on this particular field. But if we look at fields like psychology, most folks know this is something that's been told by everybody in that field, psychology, psychiatry. If you're not pursuing the master's or PhD level, you're going to have a difficult time finding the type of placement that you thought you would, being that breakthrough psychologist or psychiatrist. That's something that's, kind of a normal situation in that field. And from what I've told, it's been, worked on over the years, but that's usually something that's been accepted. In this space, that's not necessarily the case. There are absolutely so many options and so many variations of what you can do, not only in cyber, but if you go down into its larger focus, like a computer science or pure network admin, or you name it, this becomes a little convoluted. Now, I'm being very, very nice with this slide. Thank you. I'm being very, very nice with this slide because the next slide I'll show is actually a very large data set that we had to work through so that I could bring you such a pretty visual right here as far as just some of the things that you have to take in consideration when you're trying to think about what's going to be your cybersecurity career path journey. One thing really quick I want to note, if folks are paying attention right here to this graph over here, if you notice how low security intelligence is, I can give you a little hint to that. Remember, this is a trend, a growing field. So right now, the reason why this number is so small, that is actually being developed as a track. So all of the data analysis, all of the business intelligence, all of the different elements out there are now being able to be fueled and tunneled into a path that's going to be security intelligence. So just letting you all know, look for that on horizon. However, these other tracks, they had experienced the same thing previously. So that is another added kind of, complexity to this field, is as things change, as things morph, as we're talking about the next generation of computing, how do you know where to go, where you're at, what you need to be? So like I said, I was able to break down some of this in some of these charts, and I think everyone can kind of understand what's going on here. Right here, you're talking about we're usually using like as a little bit of a control, right? The job openings, say nationwide. But then you have to look at the entry-level jobs versus the knowledge that you would need. Then also you'd have to look at the skills and knowledge that would be required for particular sets. And then on top of that, what type of certifications and licensing would I need to perfectly be where I want to be or where it is I'm trying to go? See, just that quick. So on the next slide, as I said, this is just to give you an example. We have so many repositories that we pulled this information from, and I was only able to get 25, in these tiny little visuals on this screen. So that is not something we want you to do. So what does this mean to all of you all, right? Here's a little in the second slide, you saw that we're going to talk about the dilemma, and then I'm going to jump into what I think is a quick solution. Here's a method that I think you all could help you all without having to go through all of that granularity that we discovered in this process. One, be proactive. Right here is a diagram of a chart, right? That actually all of the data that you see before, and I'm going to have this recorded, basically provided for you in the next two slides, is from platforms like cybersecurity.org, ISC Squared, their platform, their education focus, the NICE framework, things of that nature. You can go and get all of this data, get all of this information, and you can get metrics about these particular fields, right? Right here is a combined chart, a visual where you should go out there instead of waiting to go to an employer or waiting to figure out what's out there or talk to your professor or, just whatever, kind of overindulgent process that you normally do. You go out and be proactive and find out what these particular roles and these skill sets are, and start diagramming them and put them in a skill set similar to this slide. Now, to break it down even more, and I said to DIY it, do it yourself. Break them down into different skill sets that you find to be requested skills. And like I said, in these particular platforms, you can go there to find this information. So right here, this is basically a broken down version of the slide you just saw, and you can pick particular skills and find out where you measure right now, right? And what is it that you're going to need to either increase that proficiency, or whatever it is that you're trying to kind of get at, right? And be realistic with yourself, okay? Because this is about improving you and making yourself a much more viable product as you move forward. So sorry, I'm trying to, as Angie said, I'm trying to make sure I navigate along with the flow of the conversation. So as I said, use elements like that to set yourself up for success. Some real quick wins, as I said, I can tell you about is do your own analysis. Like I said throughout this slide, you don't have to dive deep like we did with the tangent that we found as a new area of research for the disparity in the path between the cybersecurity workforce and its actual talent and resourcing, but at least try to leverage different areas. Like I said, cyberseek.org, these different platforms. On top of that, when you actually capture all of these roles, like develop proficiencies with analytics service or data analysis, you can actually leverage different visualizations, Power BI, build your chops in those areas, or create diagrams or metrics like these. I will let us say, since this is a career fair, these types of visualizations go very, very well in front of potential employers, department heads, folks that are trying to move up within an organization, and even for folks that have their own endeavors. Clients like to be able to see the skill set and proficiency of your talent, of your personnel, and being able to provide these types of metrics really set the right type of parameters for what you want to show as one being proactive and kind of owning your area. Some of the other things, do self-assessments and skills inventory, slightly like the one that I just showed you in the previous two slides, but try to keep a skills inventory. So if these things ever come up, you can tell people, hey, I'm at a level 3 or 6 at this particular coding element or this particular project management software, whatever it is. Gauge where you are and know where you're headed, right? Or where you're trying to go. Put your skills to the test, battle test your elements, okay? And things of that nature. I'm sorry, Angie, you're going to say something?
I was going to say thank you so much for this talk. We're at time, but we will say that you are on LinkedIn and people can connect with you there or offline. So thank you so much, Ramira.
Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed my talk and enjoy the career fair. Best of luck and be the best you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.